But Flight Risk is a standalone novel set in Washington, D.C., and it stars Savannah, who those of you who have read Hidden Justice might remember her. She's kind of a mentor character for the women in the Hidden Justice series, but this is her book, and you don't need to have read any of the others. It truly is a standalone. It's set in one of my favorite cities. I'll give you 2 guesses. This gives you a pretty good idea. One of my favorite cities that we lived in. And fun fact, Savannah actually lives in the neighborhood that my husband and I had a townhouse in. But she doesn't live in our townhouse. Sierra Turner, who's the heroine in Dying for Love, lives in our townhouse. So Savannah actually lives in the townhouse for one of our friends from when we were in D.C. Oh, Judy, thank you. It's always great to hear that you enjoy my books, because really, until you guys read them, it's just words on a page. So this book doesn't have a prologue. It jumps straight into the action with chapter 1. I will tell you, my kids had this thing when we were homeschooling and we did lots of read-alouds that I was the only one who could read a book out loud. If I had started it, then I had to finish it, because when we were in Germany one summer, my husband was like, oh, I can give you a night off and I can read. I was like, yes. And the kids were like, no, because I tend to do voices. Now, I haven't practiced this with Flight Risk. Maybe I should have. But what I thought I'd do is just read the first chapter, give you a feel for the story. It'll give you a feel for Savannah and for Jett. Jett Glover is the hero. He is a reporter at a fictional newspaper in Washington, D.C. I worked for a couple years at a TV station, so in one of the interviews I did a week and a half ago for this book, the guy who was interviewing me was like, how'd you get the newsroom right? What kind of research did you have to do? And I was like, well, I worked at a TV station, so I kind of get the news. Now, it was the smallest NBC affiliate in the country, so don't think it was New York City or anything like that. But that's where I got a lot of that kind of the live flavor, I guess, of it. And also trained people who are working in the media. Hey, Angela. And so I do have some experience with media, and then I'm an attorney. So that's kind of the 2 things that are coming together in this book. If I were to give you a tagline for Flight Risk, I would say that it's finding truth in a fake news world. So thanks, Judy. I'm glad this is fun. So that's kind of just the general setup. And now let's dive in and let's see what you think. And I'd just keep dropping comments, because it's really fun just to see what y'all think. So Chapter 1 of Flight Risk, Monday, December 7th. Savannah, call for you on line 1. Says he's a reporter. Never heard of him. The receptionist's voice interrupted Savannah Daniels mid-sentence, and she gave Emily Wesley, one of her associates at her small law firm, an apologetic smile. So Emily Wesley is the heroine in Imperfect Justice. Take a message, Bella. Emily and I are still working on the Mnemosyne mediation. Hey, Grace. She clicked off the intercom, then turned back to Emily. Where were we? She shivered and reached beneath her desk to turn on the small heater that sat at her feet. It would be April before she felt warm again. Emily tapped her notepad. You were explaining what the company is creating. Oh, that's right. Savannah glanced over Emily's head as she organized her thoughts about the complex technology. After years of working alone, she was learning a special synergy happened when 2 or more legal minds tackled a problem from multiple angles. So the company's Wonder Kid created software that is like a satellite backup of the black boxes on planes. Instead of being a physical box that records the data, Mnemosyne's system automatically syncs the data back to its servers via satellite technology. Hey, Jill, I love it. I got a couple of people from Alabama. It works? Emily stopped taking notes, her brows knit together. An attorney who also worked as a reporter for an online newspaper, Emily had a quick mind that easily processed details. Savannah nodded, thinking where to take this next. Early tests indicate it does. The mediation would start in a couple of days, and she needed Emily's help to get the preparatory brief finished. Mediation had to work because her clients needed the case to settle before they ran out of money to keep the company functioning. Breaking the complex down into something simple was one of Savannah's superpowers. Emily made a note, then tapped her pen against the paper. And the plaintiff claims Mnemosyne has infringed on their tech? That's right, I haven't seen anything to back that up, but they are fighting hard. Savannah! Bella's voice crackled over the intercom again. The reporter insists he needs to talk to you. Savannah glanced at Emily. Hey, Karen! Who had already said, we can finish later. I've got enough to get to the next level of argument outlined. Thanks. Savannah grabbed the receiver and punched the light. This is Savannah Daniels. Hey, Mary. Oh, well, if you're in chapter 17, you already know what's going on. Good morning, ma'am. The male voice was deep, the kind that resonated across a line and made Savannah smile. This is Jett Glover with the Washington Source, and I wondered if I could take a minute of your time. Jett Glover? As she searched her memory of reporters she talked to in the past, her brain twinged, as if the name should be familiar. But she came up as blank as a first-year law student. Should I know you? His chuckle was wry. That, as they say, is a problem. The hint of self-deprecation drew her in, even as she reminded herself to be guarded. He could be a private investigator or an attorney masquerading as a reporter before suing one of her clients. I'm writing an article that includes your ex-husband, Dustin Tate. Savannah stiffened, pushed back in her chair. Their divorce had been finalized a lifetime ago. For 15 years, she had avoided thinking about him any more than she had to. Why would a reporter contact her about him now? Reporters were even worse than opposing counsel, and she felt her guard build. Why? An interview would make it easier to explain. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for random media interviews. I think you'll want to. There was an arrogant certainty in his voice that made her dislike him. No way would she let him into her space. While I appreciate your call, my workload makes it impossible. Have a nice day. She hung up and leaned back as she pinched the bridge of her nose. The last distraction she needed was trying to imagine why her ex was the subject of any reporter's focus. As far as she was concerned, their lives had diverged when he left her 2 months before she graduated from law school. Focus. She glanced at the open brief on her monitor. The Meteor Eater, William Garbeau, was expecting it before 5. While Emily was a masterful writer, Savannah needed more time to fill her in on the nuances of the case. It was complicated with counterclaims and preliminary injunctions that prevented her client from continuing the test required to get the technology approved by the Federal Aviation Administration and to market. Garbeau liked having time to read the briefs and check the law before the mediation started. Going through the legal issues with Emily had given Savannah a couple of new thoughts. She would need her clients to review the brief to confirm she'd simplified the science correctly. Her calendar said it would be a quiet day in the office, a day she'd blocked out strategically to write the brief and catch up on the work that had stalled while she wrestled the Hollingsworth case to settlement and quickly resolved an emergency for Juice Store, a new client. She'd worked on something else while giving Emily an hour to massage the brief. A rap at her door pulled her attention back to the moment. Yes? You have an appointment. Savannah opened her eyes and squinted against the overhead brightness at Bella. You know as well as I do, there's nothing on my calendar. The trusty receptionist arched a brow at her. Really? I meticulously add things to the firm's calendar. Bella didn't even bother to hide her eye roll. Girl, I have worked for you for 10 years. I know that this new leaf will last approximately 2 more weeks before it blows away. She hooked a thumb over her shoulder. Besides, this guy is someone you want to meet. Fine, who is it? Jett Glover. Bella handed over a business card. Said you'd want this. I just told him no. Yep. And now he's here? Yep. Savannah let that sink in a moment as she studied the slip of cardstock. And you think I should meet him? Yep. Savannah cracked a smile. I see you're a woman of many words this morning. Fine, I'll come grab him in a minute. Bella nodded, none of her perfectly coiffed silver blonde hair moving, but there was a gleam in her eyes that made Savannah wonder what she was really up to. What had the man said to get past Savannah's first line of defense? After making him wait another 5 minutes, Savannah stood, squared her shoulders, and straightened the skirt of her black suit, then gave her jacket a quick tug. This would have to be sufficient battle armor. Anything that had the fingerprints of her ex wouldn't be great. If a reporter was involved, the truth was probably worse than the typical yuck. As she strode into the lobby, she lifted her chin and extended her hand to the man who stood looking at the framed photos of Old Town Alexandria's landmarks. You must be Jett Glover, the man who ignores clear statements. He turned and grinned, then took her hand. The instant their hands connected, she wanted to yank hers back, but that would acknowledge the immediate electric effect he had on her. As her gaze collided with the man's blue eyes, she felt her breath hesitate. Heat flushed her face in a flash. All right, so what do you think so far? Should I keep reading? Because now we switched from Savannah's POV into Jett's. So, I don't really do guy voices, so you'll just have to go with it. His task was simple. Learn the name of the fourth man who traveled with Dustin Tate. Oh, thank you for all the love. That's awesome. Jett's editor would run the article this week with or without the name, but Jett wouldn't be satisfied. So here he was, claiming an appointment when the call didn't work. He hadn't anticipated the sparks flying from the woman's eyes. Savannah Daniels, he learned when looking into her, was something of an icon among local attorneys who respected her small firm and regarded her as someone who spoke the truth and meant what she said. She taught the occasional class at her alma mater and focused her energy on fighting for underdogs. He noted the surge of annoyance that flashed up her face and had the urge to explain he wasn't usually so devious, but he guessed she didn't like to be bothered with minutia. He could press that to his advantage. Thanks for seeing me. I didn't invite you. Reporters don't always wait for invitations. He gave her his best Clark Gable grin, the one that usually left women swooning at his feet. She barely batted an eyelash. Alrighty then. As I mentioned, I'm with the Washington source. She turned and walked back down a hallway behind the receptionist's desk. He pocketed the business cards he'd grabbed from the holder on the desk while he waited, then followed Savannah down the hall, trying to ignore the deliberate pace she set that displayed her feminine curves. Not what he needed to notice right now. This week, we're running an article that your husband is featured in. X. The word was a staccato exclamation as she turned into an office. Noted. X. He followed her into the nice-sized room. The art on the wall was what he noticed first. Splashes of color against a pale field of yellow. The piece hanging behind her desk looked like a Jackson Pollock wannabe in primary colors, revealing a suppressed anger. He would have guessed she'd prefer something more pastoral or impressionist with a peaceful vibe. He pulled out notes he didn't need while she stalked behind a large desk. She didn't know how many years he'd invested in writing about the truth. How he was always just one bad article away from looking for another job. This article could be Pulitzer-worthy whether she gave a statement or not, but he wanted the whole truth. Did you know Dustin Tate was a private pilot for wealthy bad boys who have more time and money than good taste? He may have done more than fly them. Her nostrils flared as she coolly studied him. Did he like to live the high life when you were married? Hey, Sarah. On what we made? She stared at him like he was mad. Even if he did, why would that be relevant today? Maybe we could sit. She crossed her arms, leaving the heavy desk as a barrier between them, and he had to admire her unwavering focus. Fine. He'd take the lead. And he was more comfortable there anyway. He sank onto the edge of a leather chair in front of her desk, and then he leaned back, crossed an ankle over his other knee, carefully arranging the crease of his pants. There's a lot you don't know about your ex-husband. That's a given in the fact he's my ex. Look, we divorced 15 years ago. I stay out of his current life as much as possible. But her gaze darted away, suggesting she protested too much. Interesting. Hey, Tina. He kept his gaze laser-focused, and she finally eased to the edge of a chair across the desk from him. He'd claim that as a victory. I've investigated a group of 4 men who make trips to Thailand and other countries in Asia about once a quarter. Your ex is one of them, the pilot for each flight. Seems to participate in their in-country activities, too. She shrugged. An elegant motion. I don't see why that's newsworthy. These trips victimize young girls. The only indication his words registered? The faintest flicker at the corner of her eyes as she glanced at a photo that sat on the edge of her desk. One of a girl with long blonde hair and a bright smile, maybe high school-aged. She caught him looking at the photo and stiffened. The photo had to be Savannah's niece since the woman had no children. Jett pressed forward. Do you worry about his daughter? She went completely still, as if she'd been transformed to stone. "This meeting is over. You care about your niece." That would break through her icy reserve. It did, just not in the way he anticipated. In one movement, she stood and then left her office. The door barely clicked shut behind her. A moment later, while he was still trying to figure out what had happened, the receptionist reappeared. "If you'll follow me." While the accent was Southern, the tone was steel, as if she knew he'd gone too far. And that is the end of chapter 1. So I hope that gives you a sense of what's coming. There's romance, there's a legal thread, there's the what I'll call the journalism thread, the truth thread, and then there's all kinds of other stuff happening. Flight might give you a little bit of a clue as to one other thing that's going on. There's going to be a plane crash. And that's actually, hey Melinda, the plane crash is actually based on a real event from the 1980s that happened on a bridge that was one we traveled all the time headed into the city from where we lived in Savannah's neighborhood. So do you have any questions or anything like that? But I thought this might be a fun way to kind of introduce you to Savannah's story and to Jett. If you've read the Hidden Justice series, then you'll enjoy seeing characters like Emily Wesley pop in. If you haven't, no worries. This is meant intentionally to stand alone. My editor had not read any of the others, so anything that wasn't clear to her is out of there or was explained. So it releases April 7th. It'll be available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, really wherever you like to buy books. But like I said at the beginning, CBD, or Christian Book Distributors, is already shipping it. I got mine 2 or 3 days ago, which is just crazy, but really, really cool. I love that they were able to ship it first. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, drop a comment and let me know, because then I was thinking I might do it with some of the other books where I'll just read the first chapter. Oh, my sweet little old dog wants to come and say hello. So, I always think it's kind of fun to learn about books from the authors. And thanks so much for joining in. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a fantastic evening and a great rest of your week.